It might genuinely be coming home, and it really might. I said it in my last video that there is something special about Thomas Tuchel's England. There is something special about Thomas Tuchel as a manager. He has that winner's mentality and he makes winning teams. He instills that winning mentality into his players, and this is a proof. Last night's England's win over Norway, it is a proof of that. Because England have won on pure mentality. Thomas Tuchel said in the post-game interview that England have won on pure mentality. He said that you could sell it in a bottle. The game was pure mentality. It was 100% based on the will, on the desire of England and the English players to win. And the one who shone the brightest out of them, their star, their superstar, Jude Bellingham, as he has this entire campaign. He even outshone Harry Kane, Erling Haaland, the two most talked about players in the entire build-up to this game. Neither of them showed up. And yes, there was a bit of an element that Haaland didn't receive as much help from his own team. But Harry Kane, he didn't have the best of games. England, as a team, didn't have the best of games. They had a really challenging game. Thomas Tuchel mentioned it in the post-game interview that England made life difficult for themselves. That England were lucky in some very decisive moments of the game. That England were not fast enough. They were not speedy enough. And they made a lot of technical mistakes. He said that they had all the willpower, they had the mentality to win, and that is because of all that, they won the game. But on the technical front, when it came to decision making, when it came to in-game decisions, England were just not good enough. And they might just have gone out of the game if Sorloth hadn't missed that goal. England could have just been eliminated in the quarterfinals and repeated all of the mistakes that they have committed for the past 20-30 years. But this is what is different about Thomas Tuchel's England. This is what is different this time for England, and this is why it might just be coming home, even though they are facing Argentina in the semi-finals, which was decided just a couple hours later than this game. And England can only thank the heavens, England can only thank the gods, England can only thank Switzerland that Argentina had to go all the way. Argentina had to stretch this game out. Argentina were taken to the maximum lengths by Switzerland, to extra time. They had to play for more than two and a half hours. Because now they don't have to face a fresher Argentina. They have to face an Argentine side that is as exhausted as they themselves are. And yes, before the game in the media, there was a lot of talk about how hard, how tough the game this was going to be. I had said in my previous video that this was going to be a much easier game for England than the Mexico one, especially with regards to the conditions, especially with regards to the team they were facing. And yes, when you looked at the team and you looked at the paper before the game, it did reflect upon that. It did reflect that it was going to be a much easier game. Norway weren't as strong of a side, as formidable of a side as Mexico were, and the conditions weren't in favor of anyone either. The conditions weren't as unknown to England, because Norway and England both in this game were facing this Miami heat. They were both facing the humidity, and Harry Kane even mentioned it after the game that England were really struggling with the heat, with the humidity. They were struggling to put their best out there. The Miami heat were getting to them. And that is perhaps one of the reasons that England didn't look as ferocious, that England didn't look as active, they didn't look as speedy enough in this game as they needed to be. And they were really they were really making the best out of the hydration breaks. They were looking quite stressed in the hydration breaks as well. Thomas Tuchel was looking quite stressed in the hydration breaks. You could see it on their faces, you could see it on the expressions that they had on their faces, especially when Harry Kane took that free kick. He shot it over the crossbar. It wasn't even close, it didn't curl into the bar, it went right above the goal netting. It was quite obvious that England were struggling with the conditions. Harry Kane particularly was struggling with the conditions. And added to that, when you take into account Noni Madueke, who just wasn't fast enough, and as soon as he was replaced by Bukayo Saka, England became much better. England became a much better team. They started performing much better. Declan Rice wasn't in the best of physical condition. Declan Rice had been ill the entire week, and as soon as he was taken off at halftime, England became a much better team again. And then Reece James replaced Anthony Gordon. Reece James came onto the scene and he added much more composure to the English team. He came on in the 70th minute, and then there was still 50 minutes to play. They didn't know it beforehand, but there were still 50 minutes to play. And what Reece James did with this English team, it just added another dimension, it added another dynamic to this English team's performance. And as good as Norway were looking in the first half, as threatening as Norway were looking in the first half, they didn't do themselves any favor. Haaland, he is one of the best goal scorers in the world, but Norway just weren't giving him enough chances. Yes, Norway had much of a concentration into the opponent half. Yes, Norway did have much of a concentration in the final third in the penalty box. And Kjellerup's goal even reflected that. He scored from the edge of the penalty box. He scored out of nowhere, he scored a worldie. But this is the difference maker between Norway and England. Jude Bellingham was getting into those spaces. He was getting into those little pockets of space where England were providing him with those opportunities that he was capitalizing off. He was getting into those spaces and scoring those goals. That's how he scored both of the goals for England. But Norway didn't do anything of those sorts. Sorloth had that golden opportunity to pass the ball to Erling Haaland. He was free on the other side. He was free on the other flank. And he could have scored that goal as well. I don't understand what happened with Alexander Sorloth. Because yes, he's had a much more challenging season with the club. He's had a challenging time with the national team as well. He hasn't had as many goals. He hasn't had as many opportunities, let's say. But in that moment, when you have your country's entire campaign at stake, you have your entire national team's campaign at stake, you have to pass the ball to your best player, and you don't, you are going to get out. You are very comfortably going to go out against a team that is as determined as England is, against a team that features as determined players as England does. You are bound to go out. And Norway simply weren't as determined enough. Norway just didn't want it as bad. Let's just be very frank about it. Norway didn't want it as bad, but Jude Bellingham did, but Dan Burn did, Reece James did, Jed Spence did. It all reflected upon the substitutions when they came on. Thomas Tuchel's substitutions in this tournament, they have been 10 out of 10. They have been right on the mark. Thomas Tuchel's one of the biggest achievements, one of the biggest decision-making, one of the best decisions that Thomas Tuchel has taken in this entire tournament. It's been his substitutions. They have reflected upon his own philosophy. They have reflected upon his own game plan in this tournament, and they have all paid off well. And Thomas Tuchel also talked about it in the post-game interview. Morgan Rogers, Reece James, he said that they were all fantastic. But there were two big problems with this entire game. And those were the first controversy, which was the spider cam issue. Apparently the ball hit the spider cam and came straight down. It took a deflection and came to the English player, which helped in Bellingham's first goal and led to England ultimately winning the game, which is a contention that many of the fans, many of the critics are making. But as FIFA has come out with their statement, apparently there were no spikes, apparently there were no changes on the graph, on the sensor that was fit into the ball. And if you look at the sensors, yes, you can see that it didn't affect play as much. Even if it hit the spider cam, which it doesn't seem to have because there was no spike on the sensors, even if it did, there wasn't much of an issue with the play. But many fans have pointed out with the BBC 3D cam view, which clearly shows a deflection taken mid-air, and they are pointing it out that that is clearly a sign that the ball hit the spider cam and did affect the player indeed. But again, it comes down to the fact that the BBC cam has shown many deviations. It has shown many discrepancies in other games as well. It has shown something similar in the Argentina-Switzerland game as well, but there was no hitting on the spider cam in that game. So it might just be a glitch in the BBC cam system. It is really hard to say. It is really a tough situation to say. It went on to assist England in some fashion. And I don't know how Norway can contend that against VAR, against the referees. Alfe Inge Haaland, Haaland's father, he has said in a tweet, well played Haaland and the referees. And I don't understand how that could be considered when it comes to the post-match report. Because if it didn't show on the sensors, I'm not sure how you could take that into consideration. And the second controversy was with the media. Thomas Tuchel's coach and Jude Bellingham's coach. Thomas Tuchel was criticizing his team's performance. Thomas Tuchel was reflecting upon the technical mistakes that his team made. He did say that there was no shortage of mentality with this team. It did feel like the media was trying to spin something off with Thomas Tuchel and Jude Bellingham. Some controversy was deliberately trying to be created with this entire issue. It felt like the media was playing with it a little. But Thomas Tuchel saw right through it. Thomas Tuchel called it out. He said that there was no shortage of mentality with this team. You could sell the mentality in the world. It was pure mentality with this team. But there were a lot of technical mistakes with this team, that England weren't just up to the mark. And Harry Kane also agreed to it in the post-game interview. He saw it as something positive. But Jude Bellingham has not reflected upon it as something positive. He has had an issue. He has said that it was really difficult to play against a formidable Norway team, against some of the best players in the Norwegian team. And it has turned out to be a really huge media controversy again. And we've seen for the past 2-3 decades what happens when the English players get involved in these media controversies. Something that have just purely been spun off because of some misunderstandings and some misquotes in the media, because of some poorly taken down reports, poorly understood quotes, and poorly asked questions in the first place, as Thierry Henry called it out in the post-game interview, in the post-game show. Thierry Henry said that he didn't understand the question, and he had Thomas Tuchel's back on it as well. So it's really frustrating to see that Jude Bellingham is diving into all these media controversies, because we've seen what has happened when English players do get into all this in the previous 3 decades. Sometimes the entire tournaments go off the mark, and England lose their way. They lose their mark in the tournament. They go on to lose what could turn out to be a potentially benefiting tournament for them, which could potentially have been a tournament that they could have won. It's creating these controversies in the very latter stages of the tournament, when you have the chance to win it all, to take it home. I don't understand who it benefits, and I don't think it is the smartest of things. I don't think it is the smartest of decisions from Bellingham, from the media as well, and I think it just reflects poorly on everyone involved in this whole fiasco, because they realistically have a chance of bringing it home. They realistically have a chance of beating Argentina. Argentina didn't look as good of a team as they are against Switzerland last night. And if any team can beat Argentina except France, it has to be Thomas Tuchel's England only. So I do hope that there is much more harmony going forward again. Anyways, that was it for the video. Let's see how good England does going forward. If you want to read my articles on sports, TV, film, entertainment, anti-AI stances, go check it out. Go check it out from the link in the description below. And I'll see you guys really soon. Subscribe to my socials, Twitter, Instagram. It's all linked in the bio. This is Arfe signing off again.